All right, guys, how we doing today? Today we're going to be talking about all of Kink's 2025 BMX bikes. They skipped 2024 and jumped right into 2025. I guess that's how a lot of us did it. 2024 is kind of crazy, and the BMX world has been all kinds of messed up. So we're going to review every single bike in Kink's line. I'm going to be honest with you. I'll tell you if it's a good bike, who it's good for, if you should buy it, and all of that good stuff. As you know, I have a community where you can ask all of your BMX questions. And if you need help finding a bike, let me know. Fill out the free BMX bike recommendation, and I'm going to find a bike that's perfect for you. I'll find 3 that are perfect for you, and then you can just choose one. But let's get into the 2025 Kink bike reviews. Let's talk about the 2025 Kink Curb. So this is the 2025 Kink Curb. It's only $329, which is a pretty low price for a BMX bike. You'll see why it's a low price for a BMX bike, but this is a high tensile steel, lower quality bike that's designed for brand new riders. It's not for bigger riders like me. It's not for more experienced riders like Chad Curley. It's for the new guys who are getting on their first BMX bike, okay? So here's what we got about the bike. Like I said, $329. It comes in cobalt blue, marble black, and desert gold. Desert gold looks sick. It's a fairly mellow bike, and what I mean by that is it's got a small top tube length, but it's got a 13.25 chainstay, a 74.5 degree head tube angle, and a 32 millimeter fork offset. What does that mean? Well, first let's talk about the 20-inch top tube length. The 20-inch top tube length means that if we have our bike right here, okay, this is our frame, okay, it means that the top tube length from here to here is 20 inches. This is one of the smallest top tube sizes that you can get. A lot of people confuse the 20 inches with the wheel size, which is also going to be 20 inches on most BMX bikes. A 20-inch top tube is actually small and a little more less common. But anyway, it's not the same as the wheel size, it's the top tube size. This is best for riders who are right around 5 foot. I would say under 5 foot, I think that's the right, oh my God, 5 inches. Under 5 foot, it's best for people 5 foot and under, okay? What this chainstay length means, the 13.25 inch chainstay length, is that from here to here is 13.25 inches. And this is actually a longer chainstay length, okay? A lot of chainstays are right around 13 inches, but this is 13.25 on center. With these mellow things that I'm explaining, it's like, so 13.25, the fork offset's 32 millimeter. It's more mellow, okay? And what that means is, like, let's say you have responsive and mellow. The Kink Curb is gonna sit like right about here because of the geometry. It's not responsive, it's mellow. And what that means is how quickly is the back end gonna lift up when you pull back? How quickly is the steering gonna engage when you steer? That's what the mellow responsiveness means, and that's what these dimensions on the screen here mean, okay? So this bike is pretty mellow. But let's talk about quality, because quality is a very important thing. You wanna make sure that you get a bike that withstands your weight and the abuse that you're going to put on it and blah blah blah. So let's take a look at the quality on this bike. Like I said, it's not that great. It's fully high tensile steel in the frame, in the forks, and in the handlebars. It does have chromoly cranks, and then single wall rims somewhere on here, Mission X7 rims, semi-sealed cassette, and an unsealed front hub. So let me show you what those quality specs mean. Essentially, you've got different levels of quality. You have high tensile steel, you have some high tensile steel, you have chromoly, and you have aftermarket chromoly. Okay? And essentially, most of the parts on this bike sit right here. Chromoly is like 4 times stronger than high tensile steel. So you want to make sure that you get the best quality that's within your budget, okay? You don't get to see this level of quality until you start to spend like $500 or more. So that's why this bike is right here in the high tensile steel land, because it's not super high quality. All right. And all this means is that high tensile steel bends and breaks a lot easier than chromoly. So here's the caveat, if you're a heavier rider or if you're doing huge tricks, then you do want to have higher quality. But there's a lot of people that email me and they say, hey, is this a good bike? And I'm like, well, if you're brand new and you're not dropping down 10 sets, you know what? It's actually not a bad bike for you. And so to relate that to the Kink Curb, if you're a lighter rider, you know, you're 10, 11, 12, 13, you're one of those smaller guys and you're riding the bike and you're just doing wheelies and bunny hops and stuff, it's going to be fine. It's going to be just fine for you. You don't need something super crazy, something super bulky, because you're just chilling on it, right? You're not doing a lot of heavy tricks. This bike is a little bit heavy at 27.2 pounds, but overall, it's not too bad. So I'm going to bring back the Dougsterbob app, but here's the deal. This bike is okay for most people. The price to value is pretty good. I think with that low price tag, that is a solid deal. Even though the quality is not very good, you know, but you get what you pay for. You're not going to spend a lot of money. You're going to get an okay bike that you can ride, that you can start to learn on. Just know, my first bike was very similar to this, right? Unsealed bearings, semi-sealed cassette, full high tensile steel. It was affordable and it was my first bike. And it was like a smaller top tube size, which is crazy. But I rode that thing. I absolutely loved it. I learned some tricks on it. And then I got to that point there where the tricks that I was doing on it were too much for the bike and the bike broke. So I had to buy a more expensive bike. And that's typically how BMX is going to work. If you're brand new, this bike's fine. If you're more experienced, you rode back in the day, you're over 150 pounds, stay away from this and check out some of the other more expensive kink bikes. But that's what I think about the Kink Curb. Now, the Kink Launch BMX bike is one of Kink's lowest priced options, one of their lower quality options, and it is got some updates for 2025, mostly in the color world, but it costs $369. It's available in a midnight black, a plasma red, which looks really cool, and a platinum rose, which is a very Kink color. You know, Kink has their own colors that you see all the time. That's what this is. This is a very Kink color. All right, the Launch is one of those bikes that steps up the quality just a little bit from the Kink Curb. We've got a integrated headset. We've got the a sealed back wheel, just a little bit better part package for a little bit of a higher price, and the top tube size goes up a little bit, okay? So let's look at the geometry. This is a 20.25 inch top tube, and what that means is if we've got we've got our frame here. I'm trying to draw the frame, hold on. Okay, there we go, we got our frame here. If we've got our frame here, it means that from here to here is 20.25 inches. And this is best for riders who are between 5 foot and 5'3", okay? 5 foot to 5'3". If you're between those sizes, this is gonna be the best top tube size for you. All right, and then it's also got some other specs like a 13.25 inch chainstay, a 32 millimeter fork offset, 75-degree head tube angle, and 8.75 inch standover height. Because of these geometries, I'm going to say that the bike is pretty mellow. If we have responsive and we have mellow over here, and again, what I mean by how responsive it is or how it handles is like how quick it's going to respond when you turn the handlebars, when you pull back for a manual or for a bunny hop, like how responsive and snappy is it. This bike is probably going to be right about here. It is a pretty mellow bike. It doesn't have a short chainstay, it doesn't have a low standover height, it doesn't have a super responsive fork offset or a steep head tube angle. It's going to be right here. It's going to feel pretty stable and pretty controlled. I'd say it's good for riding on like pump tracks and just some beginner park stuff, nothing too crazy. All right, and when we go next, we got to look at the quality of the bike. While I erase my whiteboard here, we're gonna take a look at the quality to see if $369 is worth it or if you should get something else. So it's got full high tensile steel frame. It has some chromoly in the forks, high tensile steel bars, and chromoly cranks, single wall rims, unsealed front hub, semi-sealed cassette, unsealed front hub. These Kink Sever tires are not very good. It weighs 26 pounds, 12 ounces. Okay, and so when we look at the quality of this bike, we've got high tensile steel, some high tensile steel or some chromoly, Then we have chromoly, and we have aftermarket chromoly that you see on those very expensive bikes, okay? The bars are right here. The bars are high tensile steel. The forks have some chromoly, some high tensile steel. The cranks are full chromoly. That's cool. And what was the other one I missed? Forks, bars. Oh, the frame and bars are both high tensile steel. So we don't have a lot of super high quality here, right? Most of this bike is lower quality, but it steps up from the Kink curb by adding a little bit of chromoly in the forks. And so what that means essentially is, let me draw it out here. These are our forks, very, very greatly drawn forks. The step up in quality for the launch means that they put some chromoly right here in the steer tube, while the legs are still high tensile steel. And if you remember from the illustration, high tensile steel is way worse than chromoly. So what's going to happen here is if you're doing a big jump and you nose case something, it's going to bend these forks. This is good. This is a lot stronger. It's not going to bend. But these are going to bend. Your fork legs, being high tensile steel, typically bend when you nose case something, when you do a disaster, because it stretches out that fork. So if you can afford it, getting chromoly is the way to go. But like I will say in a little bit, I guess I'll say right now, is if you don't weigh a lot or you're not doing some big gnarly tricks, then it doesn't matter that much. You know, you would be just fine riding this bike because it's base level quality, but it's not, you're not a pro level rider, so you don't necessarily need pro level quality. The bike's not going to last forever. Like I talked about on the Kink curb, my bike was a low quality, high tensile steel bike, and it was good for a few months, and then I progressed, and then I broke everything on it. Okay, and that can happen to you. So, and that's okay. That's how BMX is designed to work. Like if you have $800 to buy a high quality bike, just buy one so you don't have to spend $360 four times, you know? If you don't have the money and you just want to start riding, buying something like this is just fine. But I would say, again, it's for riders between 5 foot and 5'3", who don't weigh very much, who are fairly inexperienced to BMX. If that sounds like you, this is a good bike for you. If you want my help finding other bikes that are good for you, click the link in the description and I will find 3 perfect bikes for you. It takes me about a day. I'll email it to you and then you don't have to worry about it. But that is the Kink launch. Okay, so this is the Kink Gap BMX bike. The Kink Gap BMX bike is I'd say a mid-level quality bike. It's pretty decent, although there's some room for improvement there. But this is the 2025 version, all right? So we're gonna be taking a look at it, see if it's a good bike for you or if you should buy something else. But essentially this bike is $439, right under the $500 price point. It comes in some different colors, but first, look at this midnight black. This looks sick. I like the black and copper. Like, good job, Kink. That looks really good. It also comes in a terrazzo white, which looks like last year's Kink Switch model. Looks a lot like the previous Kink Switch, except for the seat. All right. So $439, 2 color options. This bike has a 20.5-inch top tube, which is best for riders who are between 5'6" and 5'9". All right. So if this is our frame here, this is the top tube right here, and it is a 20.5 inch top tube, meaning how far your feet go right here and your hands go right here on the bars. How far is that stretch? How far are you bent over trying to hold on to it and ride it? Best for 5'6" to 5'9". If you're in between that height range, this is a good bike for you, okay, because of those sizes. Now we also have some other geometries here. We have a 13.25-inch chainstay length. We have a 75-degree head tube angle, 32mm fork offset, and a 9-degree standover height. All of this geometry, so this is where the chainstay length is. This is the standover height. Head tube angle is right here. And essentially all of these things mean how responsive the bike is. How is it going to feel when you drop into a bowl at the skate park? How quickly is it going to turn when you start to turn? This bike is a pretty mellow bike. I would say it's right here on the responsive to mellow scale. say right there. Pretty mellow bike, mostly because of that 13.25-inch chainstay, the 9-inch standover height, and the average 75-degree head tube angle. It's going to feel pretty stable, pretty controlled for you. All right, I would recommend riding pump tracks, flowing around at the skate park, maybe some small dirt jumps on this bike, but it's not a park machine by no means. All right. Now let's look at the quality. We can look at some of the other pictures on this bike, but this is pretty average Kink bike, okay? Hate those tires, but carry on. It's got a full chromoly head tube, top tube, and down tube. Now don't let Kink fool you here, because I think at one point they were trying to. Looks like they've got a little bit more clear on their messaging, but it is a tri-moly frame. It's not a full chromoly frame. You're going to see full chromoly frames a little bit later, but this is tri-moly. Tri-moly, okay? I'll explain what that means in a second. It's got 50% chromoly forks, full chromoly handlebars, and we have chromoly cranks, mission, single wall rims, a sealed hub, and an unsealed front hub. Okay, sealed rear hub, unsealed front hub. So back to our frame drawing here. Let me show you what tri-moly means. Tri-moly means that this, and this is chromoly. Okay, and if you remember, high tensile steel is way over here. Chromoly is way over here. All right, then we got some chromoly, and we got aftermarket chromoly. All right, and so these are kind of the four categories. It goes from worst all the way to best. And this frame sits about right here, some chromoly, okay, because this back end right here is high tensile steel. And what happens with high tensile steel, it's 1020 metal, while chromoly is 4130. So if you look at just numbers there, this is about 4 times stronger than 1020, right? Because 41, 10, right? Just math, because math. I don't think it's actually 4 times, but it is quite a bit stronger. And high tensile steel bends, chromoly cracks, because math, okay? But anyway, what happens here with this high tensile steel back end is when you're doing spins and stuff, is it bends whichever way you're spinning. The chromoly here keeps the main part of the frame stronger and keeps it all together, but this part just does some bending and it's not very good. All right, when we look back at the handlebars, we've got chromoly handlebars. We have some chromoly in the forks, unfortunately, and then frame there, forks, bars, cranks, chromoly, that's cool. Single wall rims are not good, especially at this price point. I'd like to see double wall rims, but as we get closer to the $500 bikes, we'll start to see that. This is what a single wall rim is it's just one single wall holding it up. This is where your tire goes, like right here's your tire. This is your spokes, okay? And this is just so weak, like this can bend really easily. On a double wall rim, you're gonna see it a little bit more like this with different chambers. And these different chambers, this is your spoke, this is your tire, oh my gosh. What you're gonna see with this double wall rim is it's just so much stronger. So when you're doing tricks, you've got this high tensile steel back end and this single wall back rim. It can get pretty sketchy, to be honest. It can get just a little bit sketchy. So with that being said, who is this bike for? Ew, look at that. Gross. I need to find a better way to clean this thing. With that being said, who is this bike for? So this is marketed as a mid-level bike and it's over $400. It's getting close to that $500 price point. Typically, I don't recommend the Gap for very many people because it's a mid-level bike. It's a 20.5-inch top tube. It's if you have the extra money, just spend the money and get the Kink Whip, because with the Kink Whip, you get full chromoly frame, not tri-moly frame. Right, you get double wall rims. It's a better quality bike for like $60-$70 more. And so typically I don't recommend the Gap for people unless it's the Gap Free Coaster or the Gap XL and you really need a tall bike. But even then, the Kink Whip XL is a better option for just a little bit more. So Kink Gap, you know, there's certain people that I recommend the curb, I recommend the launch for. The Gap is just right there in that gray area. If you're totally experienced, just save the money, get the full high tensile steel on the Kink Gap or on the Kink curb or on the Kink launch. If you're more experienced and you want to spend the money, just step it up and get the Kink Whip because it's better, okay? So that's kind of my thoughts on the Kink Gap. I'm curious what you think in the comments. If you want me to tell you which bike is right for you, click the link, get a free bike recommendation. I'll find 3 bikes that are perfect for you and I will send it to you. But that's what I think about the Kink Gap. Okay, the Kink Gap XL. Typically what I would do is I'd say, okay, Kink Gap XL, same opinions as the Kink Gap. Don't get it because you can just spend a little bit more money, get the Kink Whip XL. But I guess I have to go over it because this is a little change that we've seen in the Gap from the 2023 version to the 2025. So typically, on the Gap, the XL, and the Free Coaster version are all different colors. Okay, they have different color options. And this year, that's a little different because the Kink Gap XL 2025 comes in Midnight Black and Chorizo White, which are the exact same colors as the normal Kink Gap. And if we look at this, like, let's take a look. So we have Kink Gap 2025, okay, this color, black, Chorizo White, cool. Kink Gap XL in 2023 was Gloss Desert Sand, which looks sick, and Matte Aurora Black. But the Kink Gap not XL 2023 had its own set of colors. It had Iridescent Mocha and Matte Baked Red. So that's kind of fascinating. The XL is literally the exact same colors as the normal Gap. The only difference here, let me make sure price is the same. Yeah, price is the same. The only difference here is a 21-inch top tube and 9.25-inch bars, where on the normal XL, it was a 20.5-inch top tube, or on the normal Kink Gap, I'm sorry. On the normal Kink Gap, it was a 20.5-inch top tube and 9-inch handlebars. So those are really the only 2 changes between the Kink Gap and the Gap XL. I still feel the same way though, is like if you are brand new to the sport, well, I guess then you can't go down in quality because there's not a 21-inch Kink option that's just cheaper with high tensile steel. So maybe this one's a fit if you're like a tall, inexperienced rider with a low budget. But again, the Kink Whip, we'll talk about later, is just way better and it's just a little bit more money. So if you have the extra money to spend, it's better to invest in a bike with the full chromoly frame, the full chromoly forks, and the double wall rims. It's just bang for your buck. Just spend the extra money and get like a 4 times better bike. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about the Kink Gap XL. Not a whole lot to say about it. If you're curious what I think about the other Kink Gap, you got to watch that part, but I can help you find a bike because if you saw this Kink Gap and you're like, oh no, I really wanted that bike, sorry, sucks to suck. I'll help you find the right bike. Click the link in the description. Okay, I wanted to make a little point here about the Kink Gap, and I wanted to say Kink has simplified their BMX line in 2025. They have gotten rid of the Kink Gap Free Coaster. So if you're looking for a Free Coaster BMX bike, the Kink Gap Free Coaster used to be probably the cheapest Free Coaster complete bike you can get. They don't have it anymore. They simplified their line. They made the Gap XL and the Gap and the normal Gap the exact same colorways. They just changed the bars and the top tube size. Got rid of the Free Coaster option. So now the Free Coaster you won't be able to find until the Kink Switch 2025. So we'll talk about that one next, but I just wanted to throw in this little update about the Kink Gap and the Free Coaster. All right, so the Kink Whip, the 2025 Kink Whip, this is one that I'm always excited about. I'm probably the reason these bikes are always sold out. Like, I don't shut up about the Kink Whip. Let's talk about the Kink Whip. This is one of the best value BMX bikes that you can get. $500, full chromoly, double wall rims. You just can't lose on this bike. Is it perfect? No. There's a lot of stuff you can do to make this bike better, but as a bike right out the box for $500, you cannot find a better bike that has the quality that this bike has. Okay, it's just good baseline quality. So let's take a look at it. And then we'll decide, you know, should you buy it? Probably. If it's right for you, yes, but it's not right for everybody. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Anyway, $499, crazy good deal. It's got a 20.5-inch top tube, which essentially means here is my doodle of a top tube. And, oops, oh well, good enough. It's a race frame. Anyway, essentially the top tube is from here to here. It's how far it is from your feet to your hands all the way over there. And this is 20.5. This is a good height or good size for people who are 5'6" to 5'9". All right, so if you're in between those heights and you say, is the Kink Whip good for me? The answer is probably yes, because this is good for that. Okay, so pay attention, keep up. All right, back to here. We're going to talk about 13.25 inch chainstay, 75-degree head tube angle, 32 millimeter fork offset. Everything else in here is pretty standard, but I will say this is a little bit longer than normal. This is a little bit longer than normal. And what that does, those numbers essentially mean how stable the bike is. So if we look at responsive, like a super responsive We the People Versus, that's designed for park riding, and we look at mellow, which is something like the, oh shit, what's the Gary Young sound, the Sunday, damn. Anyway, hold on. Let's say We the People Revolver, okay, versus Revolver. Revolver super mellow, versus is very responsive. The Kink Whip's gonna sit about right here, okay. It is a pretty mellow bike, meaning that it's gonna feel stable, it's gonna feel controlled. If you're at high speeds, if you're on dirt jumps, if you're taking tight corners, you're doing anything like that, the bike is gonna feel pretty stable because it has a longer chainstay. It has the fork offset's a little bit longer. So anyway, that's how the Kink Whip is gonna feel. It's how it's gonna handle, okay? But the biggest thing here, so what I talk about the most with my videos is the value, right? The value is the most important thing to me. And when you are determining if a bike is good value, you're looking at two things. You're looking at quality and you're looking at price. And if the quality is really high and the price is really low, you have a good value bike, right? And that's why the Kink Whip always scores so well. Okay, it just is, because for low price, $500, you get full chromoly frame, full chromoly forks, full chromoly handlebars, chromoly cranks, Mission Mylar double wall rims. You get a sealed cassette, sealed front hub. Okay, overall, it is a pretty solid, high value bike. And let me show you, let me just do a little doodle to explain what that means. You have high tensile steel, you have some chromoly, you have chromoly, and you have aftermarket chromoly, which is the best of the best. Okay, and if we look at the frame on the Kink Whip, it sits right here. If we look at the forks, it sits right here. Bars sit right here. Cranks sit right here. Okay, and then we also have double wall rims. This is what a single wall rim looks like. Just one little doodle. A double wall rim looks like this with chambers in it for extra strength so that it can withstand a beating. The Kink, it kind of looks like a happy face, but the Kink Whip has double wall rims like this. Okay, that's a spoke, and this is going to be just so much stronger than the single wall rims that you're going to find on the Kink Gap, the Kink Curb, or the Kink Launch. So if you can afford to spend some extra money, you get this level of quality, right? You don't get this level of quality. No, you don't get that because you got to spend more money for that. But for only $500, and you get all the way over here, like the top 75%, they don't really have anything here. Another thing we could talk about is the chain. You've got 410, you got 510, and you got half link. All right, the Kink Whip is right here. It's not a super good chain. It's a lower quality chain, so that's something I would change out. And something else I would change out would be the Kink Sever tires. But buying a new half link chain would be like $50, and buying a new set of tires would be like 60, 70, 80 bucks depending on which ones you buy. But a new set of momentums, two demolition momentums would be 50. So you can only spend $100, and really this bike is going to be very solid for what you need it for. So in my opinion, if you're between 5'6" and 5'9", and you're moderately experienced, or you just want a bike that's pretty decent quality, you know, something that can last with you as you progress, something that you can ride and you don't have to worry about it just getting destroyed on you, I think the Kink Whip is a very good option. I always think that. Even a couple years ago, they came out at $550. And then it was not the best quality bike. The price had gone up, quality stayed the same. Not really the best value. There was some competition there. Now it's back down to $500. Good value bike, solid bike. Yeah, I really like it. They don't pay me to say that. I just think the Kink Whip, in terms of price to quality, it's one of the best value ones for sure. So the Kink Whip XL, a spin-off of the Kink Whip, my favorite bike ever, probably. Let's talk about it. Let's see if it's a good bike for you. We're gonna go over this one. I don't know where this is going to be placed in the whole thing, if it's going to be with the Kink Whip or what, but it's very, very, very similar to the Kink Whip. And I go more in depth on the Kink Whip, so just watch that video. Let me explain the discrepancies here between the XL and the normal whip. It comes in one color option now. Back a couple years ago, the Kink Whip XL would have its own color option and the normal Kink Whip would have its own color option, but the XL and the Whip, they're the same color options, okay? It's designed for taller riders. It costs $500. If I remember right, a couple years ago, the XL was priced a little higher than the Whip. If I remember right, I think it was. I think it was $550 and the Whip was $500, but I can't completely remember. Somebody remind me if that's true or not. But anyway, $500. So here's what's different, and then watch the full Kink video watch the full Whip video to understand like the main difference, or to understand what the Kink Whip is and if it's any good. Okay, it is good. Fun fact. Okay, but the big difference here is the top tube size. The Kink Whip XL has a 21-inch top tube size, which means it's going to be best for riders who are over 6 foot. If you're over 6 foot, legit over 6 foot, I know a lot of you guys put on your Tinder profile that you're over 6 foot and you're lying. If you're actually over 6 foot, then this is a good bike for you, okay? Over 6 foot, the Kink Whip XL is good because it's a 21-inch top tube. That's just what 21 means. 21, 21.25, those are good for those tall dudes over 6 foot, all right? The other thing that you'll notice here on the Kink Whip XL is that it has a 9.25-inch handlebars, meaning that the handlebars are going to be a 1/4 inch taller than the Kink Whip. So essentially, here's how it works. You are a mid-level rider and you want a good value bike, so you look at the Kink Whip. You want a bike with full chromoly, double wall rims, and just all of those good parts, all of those good baseline parts. But you're tall and you can't fit on the 20.25 bike that the Kink Whip comes in, so you get the 21-inch XL version because you're taller. That's literally the only main difference, the handlebar height and the top tube size. So that's the Kink Whip XL. Check out the Kink Whip, but yeah, that's what I think about it. If you want my help finding a bike, click the link in the description. I'll find 3 bikes that are absolutely perfect for you for free. The Kink Switch BMX bike is the only bike, I guess the cheapest bike in Kink's lineup for 2025 that has a free coaster. There used to be a Kink Gap free coaster available, but now they don't have that anymore. So if you want a free coaster bike, you got to spend the $600 and get the Kink Switch. We're going to talk about the Kink Switch. I don't really love how it looks this year, but again, that's just me, my personal preference. There's no decals except this little guy. It looks naked. Little naked bike, man. I don't know. And don't know. But look at that, new tires. Hell yeah, now we're talking Kink. Okay, so the Kink Switch is a $600 BMX bike. Like I said, free coaster. It's pretty solid. It's a good quality bike. I always talk highly of it, and I'll help you decide if you should get the Kink Switch or the Kink Whip, probably in a different video. But it has a 20.75-inch top tube, okay? And so what that means is if you are between 5'9" and 6 foot, this is gonna be a good bike for you. All right, that's my frame, and the top tube is right here, so 20.75 inches. And what that means is that's how far your feet are from your hands. Your feet go here, your hands go here, right? 20.75, best for riders between 5'9" and 6 foot. If you're in between that, this is a good size option for you, okay? 20.75, that's what that means. Now, back to the stuff here. We've got a 12.75 inch chainstay, a 75.5 degree head tube angle, 9 inch standover height, and 26 millimeter fork offset. And what those geometries mean is essentially how responsive the bike is. So you've got mellow, you've got responsive. Responsive is good for quick spins and snappy steering and riding skate parks and everything like that. Mellow is good for feeling stable at high speeds and doing dirt jumps and doing big airs and stuff like that. So with this bike, it's gonna actually be very different from a lot of the other kink bikes, okay? So that's responsive, that's mellow. And I'm gonna say the Kink Switch sits about right here. It's quite a bit more on the responsive side. And the reason for that is that 12.75 inch chainstay, that is pretty short and pretty responsive. If you pull backwards, the back end or the front end's gonna lift up quite a bit easier. It's got the 75.5 degree head tube angle. Most bikes are only 75 degrees, so this one is quite a bit more responsive. And then it has a 26 millimeter fork offset, okay? And again, that is quite a bit more responsive than, like, I'd say 30s right in the middle. This used to be super responsive, and now they've gone to, like, some bikes have a 15 millimeter, which is crazy responsive. So this technically is average, but it's not. In terms of how it feels for responsiveness, this is still responsive. It's gonna pop into nose manuals easier, and yeah, it's gonna feel responsive. So this is a responsive bike. It's good for like more technical street riding, more technical park riding, things like that. It still has that 9 inch standover height, so it's not good for like triple tail whips and those tricks, but it's good. It's a pretty responsive bike. All right, so the biggest thing in terms of value is quality to price. So $600, what do you get for that $600? You get a bike with full chromoly frame, full chromoly forks with a one-piece steer tube, full chromoly handlebars that are 9 inches tall, chromoly cranks, double wall Mission Mylar rims, a sealed free toaster, and a Mission Bond sealed bolt-in. I think that means it's a female front hub. Pretty sure it's a female front hub. No pictures, but I'm pretty sure it's a female front hub. The other thing I wanted to mention, 4-piece handlebars, which make it more street specific, top load stem, and it comes with pegs. This is the first bike in Kink's lineup that comes with pegs. You know, you go gap, no pegs, launch, no pegs, curb, no pegs, launch, no pegs, gap, no pegs, and whip, no pegs. And then the switch comes with pegs, so that's kind of cool. But the thing I wanted to talk about was the tires, the Kink Wake 2.45. These are new tires for this year, and ooh, makes it pretty heavy. Makes it heavy. I don't know how I feel about these. I don't know enough about them yet, but they do look quite a bit better than the Kink Sever tires. The big deal with the Kink Sever tires is, like, I talked a lot of shit about them in last year's reviews, but they are insanely heavy. The Kink Sever tires are just so heavy, and they're slippery. So you could like replace them and save a ton of weight. I would assume that these tires are the same way, like very heavy, but I don't actually know that for sure. So I don't want to talk on it, but we can take a look real quick. Kink Sever tires, 32.5 ounces. Guys, that's literally 2 pounds. That is 2 pounds of tire. That's fucking crazy. Okay, and these are 24.7. So these are quite a bit lighter. All right, quite a bit lighter than the Sever tires. And I guess we get that 28-pound bike because of the 2 pegs, maybe. Because they're nylon, they look metal in the picture, but what the hell do I know? Oh, they are nylon. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, that's the Kink Switch. Is it good for you? Is it a good bike? I think the Kink Switch is awesome. I like the value because you're spending $100 more than the whip, but you're getting a bike with a free coaster, 4-piece bars, pegs. It's a little more street specific. Yes, it's $100 more, but it's still good quality. And again, it's more responsive and street specific. The geometries on the whip down are very generic geometries, I'd say. They're not like, they're just generic. Those are the typical geometries you'll see on most bikes. 13.2 inch chainstay, 75-degree standover height, 32mm fork offset. Like, those are very standard. So the Switch switches it up and makes them a little bit more unique and better for certain types of riding than just standard riding, if that makes any sense. But that's the Kink Switch. I can let you know if it's perfect for you, and I can also find 3 bikes that are absolutely perfect for you by clicking the link in the description. Fill out the recommendation. I'll let you know if it's a good bike, and I'll send you some good bikes for you. So yeah. The Kink Downside is all new for 2025, and it's replacing the Kink Cloud BMX bike because Travis Hughes is no longer on Kink. Kink's had a lot of changes recently, and the Kink Downside is one of those changes. This is a new bike for $750. It's got a different makeup a little bit. Very different colorway, but yeah, $750 BMX bike, full chromoly, and it's got a little bit of a pro part package. So it steps up the quality quite a bit. And this one and the Kink Williams are the highest quality bikes on Kink's lineup. Comes with pegs, comes with hub guards, comes with a free toaster. Actually, yeah, okay, free toaster, cool. Anyway, we'll talk about the Kink Downside and see if it's a good bike. I'm already a little Hobie Don type vibe here. I like the chrome Kink Cloud last year. That was cool, but last year, was that a couple years ago? I think that was a couple years ago. Man, where have I been? But anyway, let's talk about the geometry on this bike. It's got a 20.75 inch top tube. And what that means is we've got our frame here. This is the top tube right here. This bike is 20.75. This is best for riders who are between 5'9" and 6 foot. If you're between those heights, this is the right top tube size for you, and you might consider getting this bike and riding this bike. But there's a little bit more that goes into the geometry and how it feels. So we've got a 12.75 inch chainstay, 9.25 standover height, and a 26mm offset. The 11.75 inch bottom bracket height is a little unique also. So what those mean is this is the chainstay length right here, this is the standover height, this is the head tube angle, and the fork offsets right here, right? And so essentially the angles of these geometries tell you how responsive the bike is going to be or how mellow the bike is going to be. And this bike is funny because the standover height is 9.25, which is more of a mellow standover height, but it's got that 12.75 inch chainstay length, 26mm fork offset, and that puts it a little closer to responsiveness. So I'm gonna say it's about right here. It's kind of in the middle, but not quite. Like that more responsive fork offset's gonna make it good for nose manuals and popping up that way. The chainstay is gonna make 360s quite a bit easier because it's a snappy chainstay. It's gonna make manuals easier to get into. But that taller standover height just gives the bike a little bit of stability. And so with this bike, you know, it's good if you are a balanced rider, if you like to ride just a little bit of everything. You know, you like to do a little park, a little street, a little bit of dirt, you like to do it all. This one's pretty solid for mixing it up that way. But let's look at the quality on this bike and see if this is a good bike or if it's a little bit overpriced. Personally, I think the Cloud is pretty decent for the price that they offer, and because you've got a full chromoly frame, you've got chromoly forks with a one-piece steer tube, you've got full chromoly bars. These are aftermarket Kink Williams bars, so that is a good thing to know. And then we've got full chromoly 3-piece cranks, we've got double wall Mission Mylar rims, sealed free coaster, sealed front hub. Overall, we've got some good parts on here. 4 Mission nylon pegs, and hub guards. I don't know if it says it on here. Hub guards. But so let's break down that quality real quick. We've got High tensile steel, some chromoly. We've got chromoly, and we've got aftermarket chromoly, which is the best of the best. Okay, and so we don't have any parts in the high tensile steel section, so that's good. But we've got the frame as just a chromoly frame, and there's always been a little bit of discrepancy here, a little bit of confusion on whether or not this is the aftermarket frame when it was the Cloud, because what Kink would say is, like it says right now, Kink Downside 100% 4130 chromoly, right? And they would do the same thing, Kink Cloud 100% chromoly, but it's not the aftermarket frame. The aftermarket frame is way more expensive and way better quality. And it would sit over here, but it's not that. It's just a mass-produced frame for the Kink Downside, okay? And so it's right here, all right? The handlebars, though, are aftermarket chromoly. The forks are normal chromoly. The cranks are normal chromoly. It does have double wall rims, like I've described in previously. Rims like this with the chamber, they're 2 times stronger than this one. This single wall rim is lame. This one is good. And I think that's it. Double wall rims, full chromoly with some aftermarket chromoly handlebars. That's solid. We definitely like that, because if you're serious, or you're doing a lot of BMX, or you're learning a lot of new tricks, or you're crashing a lot, you want to have a stronger bike that's going to be able to withstand all of that, right? You don't want a bike that's going to just fall apart every time you land funny, or every time you try a new trick and eat it, right? You want to be able to withstand that. And the Kink Downside is definitely one of those bikes. You know, there's no downside to the Kink. I feel so gay when I try and do like a dad joke. I did one, I think, with the Switch earlier. I said, I need to stop. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make these dad. I give up. All right, I give up. Anyway, Kink Downside. What do I think about it? For $750, it's a pretty good bike. The only reason that I would buy the Downside over the Kink Whip or over the Kink Switch is if I wanted this specific type of geometry and I wanted this amount of pegs. Okay, and what I mean by that is, like, the only step in quality that you get from this bike versus the Switch or versus the Whip is the aftermarket handlebars, really. Maybe you get a 510 chain. Yeah, you get a 510 chain, and the pegs and the hub guards, but quality-wise, there's not a huge difference. Like, the Kink Whip probably scores a 6.9 on quality, and this probably scores a 7.4. So it's not like a crazy huge quality difference. And I'm probably going to bring back the Dougsterbob app. So fun fact, we're working on that. I'm just going to spend the money again, bring it back. It's far down on the to-do list, but I want to do it. But anyway, you'll be able to easily see those things. So that's the Kink Downside. I think it's okay if you want this style, if you want the pegs and you want the hub guards and you want the little bit of like in between mellow and responsive geometry. It's a good choice. But the price is quite a bit higher for not that much more quality than the Switch or the Whip. So just being honest with you guys, that's what I think about it. If you want me to find the perfect bike for you, fill out the bike recommendation. I will find 3 bikes that are absolutely perfect for you, but that's the Kink Downside. All right, the Kink Williams BMX bike in 2025 is a $900 BMX bike with 4 pegs, 4 hub guards, and a few pro level parts. It's a pretty expensive bike, but we're gonna break it down. We're gonna talk about it. See if this is a good option. Okay, so coming over here to the screen share Brantmore style, we got the $900 Kink Williams, and we've got some geometries here. Okay, but first let's take a look at this bike. It is beautiful. We've got the bash guard on the sprocket. I love this color. We've got the cinema seat post. We've got some handlebars, obviously. We've got a nice set of tires. This is a nice bike. Like, I do like the Kink Williams. It's a little bit on the expensive end, but they've brought it down. When they initially put out the 2023 line, this was a $1,000 bike, and now they've brought it down to $900, so I'm definitely happy to see that. But it does look nice. Like, you cannot deny this is a nice looking bike. Okay, 21-inch top tube. All right, and what does that mean? Well, 21-inch top tube means that it is about 21 inches from here to here. So 21 inches, and that means that it's going to be best for riders who are over 6 foot. I'd say right at 6 foot though. Like, you know, you could be right around there. 5'9", probably too small, but 5'10", 11, 12. I mean, 12 would be 6 foot, but right around there. If you're this height, this is a good bike for you, okay? It's a pretty big top tube, so you've got to be a taller rider to be able to maneuver this thing. The other geometries just talk about how responsive or how the bike is going to feel. So we've got a 12.75 inch chainstay. We've got a 75-degree head tube angle. We've got a 30 millimeter fork offset. And so what that means, what those numbers mean, is we've got mellow over here and we've got responsive over here, okay? And the Kink Williams is going to sit at a very responsive spot, very responsive. This 9-inch stand, so standover height's right here. This is 9 inches, that's pretty standard. Chainstay length is 12.75, this is pretty mellow. Head tube angle is 75.5. This is pretty responsive. Oh, I meant responsive. I said mellow here. That's pretty responsive. This is pretty responsive. 30 millimeter fork offset's about average. Okay, but because of that, it is a pretty responsive feeling bike. It's going to be pretty snappy. It's going to pull back into manuals easily. Overall, it's going to feel responsive. Okay, good for technical street riding, good for some technical park riding. Not so good on the dirt jumps, but not terrible. All right, so that's how the bike's going to feel, but let's talk about these parts on there. One of the most confusing things is when you look at the parts on the bike, you're like, hey, is this good or is this bad? Like, what does that mean? Because there's a lot of stuff on there and it's a little bit confusing. So I'm going to explain it to you. The first thing I need to explain to you is the frame. Kink Williams stock. Good job, Kink. God damn. All right, I'm happy about that. I'm very happy about that because like I talked about earlier with the downside is like, this is something, I live in the ghetto. Oh, you can't, there's a car alarm going off. Anyway, this is something that happened last year, a few years ago, is like Kink would put on the info here like, hey, this is a Kink Williams 100% chromoly. And they didn't distinguish whether this was the Kink Williams frame that cost $400 on its own, right? Is it the Kink Williams frame or is it a stock frame? And it is a stock frame. Like, I got into it with some of my followers. I'm like, yo, this is not the aftermarket frame. I'm telling you. They're like, yes, it is. And I'm like, email Kink. And they did. And guess what? It's not the aftermarket frame. So I'm really glad that they distinguished that, because here's the deal. If you're buying a We the People Envy, if you're buying a Sunday Soundwave or a Sunday Street Sweeper, if you're buying any of those bikes are expensive, right? Like over $1,000, except the Street Sweeper, over $1,000 on these other bikes. They have the aftermarket frame. And so when I draw out the qualities, I'll talk about the rest of the stuff first, but when I draw out the qualities, you'll start to understand why that's such a big deal to have like an aftermarket frame versus a normal frame. There's just more love that goes into it. It's usually heat treated, it's usually double butted, it might use Senko chromoly tubing versus normal chromoly. Like, there's just steps of quality that go into it that make it more expensive and more durable. Double or chromoly is good, but if you can afford aftermarket chromoly, much better. All right, so just keep that in mind. But here, let's go back over the rest of it. I just wanted to touch on that. It's like, yo, that's good that they're distinguishing that, okay? Forks, Kink Origin, aftermarket, 1.5 piece steer tube, full chromoly. Kink Williams, aftermarket bars. We've got the Kink Ridge 3-piece cranks. We've got the double wall Cinema 444 rims. That's awesome. We've got Cinema Williams tires. We've got a Sync half-link chain. Love that. And Cinema free toaster, Cinema sealed bolt-in hub with hub guards on this. Okay, so overall, you're getting a lot of good stuff. The only drawback that I would say for a pro level bike is that this is not the aftermarket frame. But again, it's really not the end of the world. So here's what I wanted to break down is like, you've got high tensile steel all the way over here, like the Kink curb, and then you've got aftermarket chromoly all the way over here. This is way better than normal chromoly, than anything else, all right? And the Kink Williams frame sits right here. The handlebars are aftermarket chromoly. The forks, I don't think the origin forks, I've got to double check actually. I think the origin forks are just forks that they made for the Williams because they're not fully aftermarket. So that's one fun fact. Like they're pretty good forks, but they're not the same level of quality as like the Stoic forks or those aftermarket forks. But anyway, frame, bars, forks, cranks are right here. We've got a half link chain, which is much better than a 410 chain that you're going to find on most bikes, so that's good. We've got double wall 444 rims. That's what single wall looks like. Crap. That's what double wall looks like with those chambers, man. And then 444 rims are even better than like the Mission Mylar rims. So that's good. We've got a lot of good stuff here. The only thing that I would like to see on this bike is moving these chromoly parts over here to aftermarket chromoly. But you can't have everything. And for $900, like, it's a little bit on the high end, to be honest, because you've got, like, I don't know, you spend $300 more, you get full aftermarket everything on, like, the Envy or on the We the People Soundwave. But if you want to save that money and get kind of a pro-level bike, I still wouldn't quite classify this as a pro-level bike. You can get a kind of pro-level bike for $900. Like, it's good. I'm not saying this is a bad quality bike. I'm just trying to speak to the quality to price ratio. And like, here's something that kind of bamboozles me is the Street Sweeper, I think. Let me check. It's like $800. This is a special offer on Dan's Comp, but so $829 for the Street Sweeper. So it's cheaper. Okay, stay with me, guys. It's cheaper than the Kink Williams, and this is the aftermarket Street Sweeper frame. And it's got hook off. Pop-ups piss me off. I will never ever put a pop-up on one of my websites ever. All right. Anyway, bars. So what Sunday did with this is a little different. They put a high-end aftermarket frame and then normal chromoly forks and bars, and it's still cheaper than the Kink bike. So I don't know. I have kind of mixed feelings about that. Like the Williams, kind of overpriced for what it is, but it's not bad, and it is a clean-looking bike, and it's not bad quality. It's just a little bit expensive for $800, $850. It's more in the ballpark of what you would expect to get. Like the Sabrosa Novus is way out in left field. Like they're goofy with the price they put on the Novus. They priced it at like a Sunday Street Sweeper, and it is a Williams quality bike, right? So Kink is doing okay, but they could bring it down a little bit and still make some money on it, I guess is what I'm getting at. But that's my thought on the Kink Williams. And also, well, yeah, I guess that's my thought on the Kink Williams. Oh, and if you want me to find 3 bikes that are perfect for you, click the link, free bike recommendation. I'll find 3 perfect bikes. I'll send it to you, and you will never have to worry about watching another bike review. Those are all of Kink's bikes. Gap, Curb, Launch, Williams, Downside, Switch, Whip XL, Gap XL. There's been some changes in Kink's line for sure, but I'm pretty excited about these bikes. I'm curious what you think. Which one of those bikes was your favorite? And if you have any questions about BMX, go join my community and shoot some questions in there. Super excited to hear from you guys. Glad to be back making bike reviews. Missed you all. Check out one of these videos if you want to watch more videos like this. We'll see you next time.